Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC Mexico City. In this matchup, we have Edgar Cháirez taking on Felipe Bunes. This one feels kind of like a mirror matchup, if you will. Both are tall flyweights, both are about 5'7". Now, their reach isn't comparable, right? Cháirez has a 71-inch reach advantage to Bunes' 69-inch reach advantage. But both are, like I said, tall, lanky flyweights, about 5'7". Both dangerous on the feet, but both are extremely willing to grapple and scramble. And I think this is probably the most action-heavy fight on the card. I said in my previous video, Rodriguez versus Borjas, the most explosive fight, but I think this is going to be the more action-packed fight because they both can fight in all phases of MMA. And both aren't usually both guys aren't going to play it safe. Cháirez and Bunes, they're going to fight to finish, and I think that leads to this being more action. Like I said, both can strike. Both are very fun grapplers to watch, so I think it's going to be a fun matchup. But with that said, let's look at our two fighters. Starting with Felipe Bunes, he's currently 14-8 as a professional, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Now, looking at the UFC, he's currently 1-2. But, he's only lost to some elite level competition. I mean, his first fight in the UFC was to Joshua Van, who finished him. Then had a good submission win over Jose Johnson, which was about a year and a month ago, or last January. Then in his most recent fight, he lost to undefeated prospect Rafael Esteban. So really, Bunes hasn't lost to anyone bad. In fact, he's only lost to a champion and an undefeated fighter. So that really shows his skill level as well. Oh, and like I said, though, but Bunes is good, I think. He has good jiu-jitsu, he's got good striking, it's just elite level competition, But that is the UFC in a nutshell, right? You fight the best of the best, usually speaking. Now, looking at Edgar Cháirez, he's currently 12-6-1 as a professional, 2-2-1 in his last 5 fights. In his UFC debut, he took on Tetsuro Taira on short notice. He literally only lost to the man fighting for the belt in Miami in April. And he had some good moments, even locked in a guillotine that looked pretty close at times. Had a no contest against Daniel Lacerda, which really shouldn't have been a premature stop. That's right. Which really shouldn't have been a no contest. It was a premature stoppage, but I don't think Lacerda was getting out of there. Then Cháirez quickly submitted him in the rematch. Then in a very fun firefight, in his last loss, he lost to Joshua Van last September. Or no, I take it back, UFC 306, so September 2024. Which was, like I said, a fun fight. He had the current champion in a bad way a few times, especially like that spinning back elbow. And then most recently in his last fight, which was last March, he submitted CJ Vergara. So far it's shown that Cháirez, like Bunes, has only really lost to elite. I mean, he literally lost to the champion and the title contender, and has beaten some of the lower ranked flyweights. If I'm being real here, like both of those guys are not in the UFC, Lacerda and Vergara. So this will be a good next step up for Cháirez, and I feel like appropriate matchmaking. But with that out of the way, let's get down to the breakdown. Starting with Cháirez. On the feet, he's long and creative. He doesn't just throw straight combinations. Cháirez, he mixes levels, attacks from different angles, and carries real power for flyweight. Like that check left hook he landed on CJ Vergara, dropped Vergara pretty quickly. The key difference for me, and that's the key difference for me, at 125 pounds, power isn't always the deciding factor, but Cháirez seemingly hits hard for the division. And when he lands clean, you see reactions. He's also comfortable being unconventional. Like I said, he'll throw at odd angles, he'll throw spinning back elbows, and he'll try it, and he's not always predictable. On the ground, he's very comfortable in chaos. Cháirez doesn't mind being on his back. He's aggressive with submissions. He'll throw up triangles, he'll attack legs, he'll create scrambles. He doesn't look lost in transition. In fact, he's a pretty good grappler. And in a matchup where both guys are likely to scramble repeatedly, composure and chaos matters. Now, looking at Felipe Bunes, he's very, very similar to Cháirez in many aspects. He's tall, long, and aggressive at flyweight. Good striking, good submission instincts. He's also comfortable in scrambles and doesn't shy away from grappling exchanges. On the feet, he has plus power for the division as well. He can crack. He's not just a volume guy. I would say, though, Cháirez might hit harder, but I'll get more into that with their styles. Now, technically, his striking may be a little more straightforward than Cháirez, but it's effective. And on the mat, he's active as well. Bunes hunts for submissions. He's not afraid to attack off his back. You saw like the armbar he got on Jose Johnson, or the buggy choke he attempted on Rafael Esteban. So in this type of matchup, it's not striker versus grappler. It's two grapplers who can strike. And that's where it gets tricky. Because I look at it, this is basically a mirror matchup. Because both guys are very similar here. So you start looking at who has the edge, right? Both are long for flyweight, both are dangerous in scrambles, and both can fight off their back pretty well, and both have good power and striking. So what separates them? For me, it's two things: power and creativity. Cháirez appears to carry slightly more natural power on the feet, and in exchanges where both are willing to engage, that matters. Even if their jiu-jitsu is comparable, I think the fighter who hits harder often dictates the tempo of scrambles, because harder ground strikes or ground and pound is going to force reactions from the guy on bottom, and harder counters create hesitation. In a matchup this closely stylistically, small physical edges can tip rounds. Now we also add in the altitude because we're in Mexico City. This fight is likely to be high pace, scrambles, transition, and contested exchanges. And at elevation, that kind of fight drains fighters fast. So the question becomes, who's fresher in the later rounds, more specifically like round 3? For Cháirez, he has shown solid cardio. He's comfortable pushing the pace, and he trains in Mexico. So I think he's going to be used to the elevation much more than Bunes. And if this turns into a high-paced scramble battle, I lean slightly toward Cháirez being the fresher fighter late. And in a close fight, late rounds matter. So just looking at it, this is, I think, going to be more competitive than the 2-to-1s have you believe. Bunes absolutely has the skills to win. If he lands clean early or locks up a submission during a scramble, this can flip instantly. But when I compare the two, right, similar grappling, similar physical build, and similar willingness to engage, I think the edge, like I said, the edge I see is in power and creativity. And in a fight likely to feature constant exchanges, that matters. So for my official prediction, I'm going to go with Edgar Cháirez in this fight. I think in a high-pace, high-scramble fight at elevation, I favor Cháirez to land the more impactful shots and be slightly fresher down the stretch. So I think it's a close fight, but I definitely got to go with Edgar Cháirez in this matchup. And I'm going to pick him via submission in this one. I definitely see him having the better technical jiu-jitsu in the long haul of this fight. And while I think it will be close and competitive in round 1, and probably the first half of round 2, I would still favor Cháirez greatly to find the submission and find it late in the fight. So once again, I'm going to pick Edgar Cháirez, and I'm going to pick him via submission in this matchup. But with that being said, that's been my breakdown of this fight. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below on who you think is going to win. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. And remember, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. I'll see y'all next time.